It's only natural to choose a younger woman over an old hag like you, right? If I'm an old hag, then you're an old geezer. I wanted to retort but held back, glaring at my grinning husband instead. Indeed, I am older than my husband and the oldest in this household. The younger woman my husband pointed out is almost half my age. Yes, the woman my husband had an affair with is none other than our daughter-in-law. The said daughter-in-law, being called a younger woman, my husband pointed out is almost half my age. After all, don't you feel sorry for her? For a woman to marry a man like this, it's no wonder she'd want to cheat once or twice. What my husband dismissively referred to was our son. Such a heartless comment about our child who had just received a terminal diagnosis. I was about to shout in anger when a calm voice spoke up from behind me. Hey, Mom. Our son, caught in the middle, had a surprisingly calm face. But seeing the uncontainable anger in his eyes, I involuntarily held my breath. There's something I need your help with. That's okay, right? My name is Courtney. I'm a 55-year-old office worker. My husband, Robert, is younger at 51. We met in a mountain climbing club 30 years ago. The age range in the mountain climbing club I belonged to was from the 20s to the 60s, with a fairly equal number of men and women. Mountain climbing is great, isn't it? Courtney, why did you start mountain climbing? Robert was personable and cheerful, making him easy to talk to even at first meeting. I started because of my father's influence. Influenced by your dad, that's nice. What about you, Robert? Why did you start mountain climbing? If there's a mountain, a man just wants to climb it. What's that supposed to mean? Thanks to his indiscriminately friendly nature, we quickly became friends. How old are you, Courtney? Me? I'm 26. Older. Older women are wonderful, aren't they? Really? But if I'm older, that means you're younger, right? How old are you? I'm 22. So young. Only a 4-year difference. That's quite a big difference, actually. Is it? Talking to him was so much fun. And on that very day we met, he proposed to me at the mountain summit. Actually, I fell in love with you at first sight. I had already given my heart to him during our climb, so I accepted his relationship proposal right there. From the day we first met, we became a couple. With mountain climbing as our common hobby, we never ran out of things to talk about. While enjoying dates as lovers, we also participated in the mountain climbing club's activities together. A year into our relationship, I discovered I was pregnant. This led to me and him getting married. After getting married, I realized my husband didn't have much savings. Although he was working hard as a company employee, he was still young at 23, and his salary was less than mine. Rather than not having savings, it seemed more like he had the kind of personality that spent his salary as soon as he got it. I was on maternity leave by the time I entered my 9th month of pregnancy. While on leave, I could receive a salary from my company, but it was less than what I earned while working. Because of this, I greatly relied on my parents, who lived nearby, for financial support. Not only did my parents help financially, but they also provided various other forms of support, allowing me to safely give birth to a boy. We named our son Sean and raised him with care. Before Sean turned 1, I returned to work. Raising a child while balancing work was challenging, but we supported our lives through dual income. Sean grew up healthy and strong. Time flew by, and before we knew it, Sean was 24. After graduating from college, our son moved out and seemed to be working hard on his own. He contacted us saying, "I have something important to discuss with you and Dad, so please keep next Sunday free." And today is that Sunday. Both my husband and I were restless. When the doorbell rang and we opened the front door, there stood Sean and a woman of his age beside him. She was a demure-looking lady who seemed like she would suit a kimono well, quite adorable. "Dad, Mom, let me introduce you. This is Kim, whom I am currently dating. Nice to meet you. My name is Kim." Kim bowed her head slightly. She's a lovely young lady. Hearing this, my son smiled happily. I'm thinking of marrying Kim. Sean declared that, standing together with Kim. Kim was apparently one of Sean's subordinates. Receiving the news that my son was getting married, I savored the happiness deeply. Oh, Sean is at the age to get married now. What's with that, Mom? Getting all sentimental. So, what do you like about Kim? I might have been too forward, but I asked directly. She's usually quiet, but I like that she can speak her mind when it matters. She doesn't hesitate to say what she wants, even to her boss, me. That's because Sean. Let's not start with the criticisms, okay? Everyone burst into laughter. Seeing their harmonious atmosphere made me feel incredibly happy. After Sean and his fiancée, Kim, left, I spoke to my husband. She was a lovely lady, wasn't she? Yeah, very adorable. You keep saying adorable, adorable. I sighed in response. Do I still look young? You do look younger than your age, but don't take Kim's words too seriously. They're just being polite. I'm already 52, and my husband is turning 48, but he seemed very pleased with Kim's words. You look like a cool father-in-law. 2 years after the marriage proposal, our son, now 26, and his wife came over. Actually, we want to build our own home, so we're saving up for it. Could we possibly live with you to help with that? Live with us? Well, I don't mind. But you have Kim's consent, right? Our house had enough room for the son and his wife to stay. However, I couldn't imagine anyone would be happy about living with their in-laws after just 2 years of marriage. When I asked, it turned out that the idea of living together came from my daughter-in-law. When the 4 of us discussed it later, my daughter-in-law seemed genuinely happy and looking forward to it. I wondered if this was common nowadays, then looked at my husband. What about you? What do you think? My husband's face lit up at the mention of the topic. Well, if we lived together, we could see our grandchild right away if one were to be born, right? Seeing my husband agree so readily, I found myself nodding in agreement. I understood it was a decision for them to make, but I too was looking forward to the birth of a grandchild. Thus, with everyone's wishes, we started our life living together with our son and his wife. I work, so I am not home much. Kim, having resigned from her job upon marriage in a practice known as retirement upon marriage, is now a full-time homemaker. Therefore, she is at home all day. I am very grateful to her for taking care of things like receiving deliveries, doing the laundry, and preparing meals. However, the fact that we spend little time together means we avoid unnecessary conflicts, and life has been smooth sailing. But this lifestyle did not last long. About a year after we started living together, our son was diagnosed with a disease that was weakening his immune system. No one spoke during dinner on the day his illness was discovered. I tried to accept it somehow, but I couldn't sleep at all that night, imagining the worst-case scenario. After the discovery of our son's illness, Kim, who was a homemaker, started working part-time to earn money for his treatment and began to be out often. As our son's condition worsened, he eventually needed a wheelchair for mobility. We decided to support our son as a family, relying on a helper during the day. One evening, while doing the dishes, Kim had a request. I have a sudden shift at work tomorrow. But tomorrow is the day to take Sean to the hospital. I tried to say no because it was impossible, but they insisted I must come in. Could you please take Sean to the hospital tomorrow? Of course. Thank you so much. Mom's taking me tomorrow? Hearing my son's frail voice from the living room connected to the kitchen, I rushed over to listen to him. After the hospital, can we go shopping? There's something I want to buy. Of course, we can. Then, why don't you two go have some coffee after shopping? There's that new pancake place, right? My husband suggested while fiddling with his smartphone next to my son. Sure, let's have pancakes for lunch then. The next day, I pushed my son's wheelchair and we went to the hospital. Perhaps because it was a Monday, the hospital was quite crowded, and my son seemed tired from the throngs of people. So, we decided to change our plans for shopping and head home early. In the car, my son told me he wanted to buy a present for Kim as a thank you for always supporting him. But it's pathetic, isn't it? Wanting to buy something and not being able to go by myself. And in the end, I couldn't buy it today. Hearing my son mutter softly in the car made my throat tight. Perhaps it's the thought that counts. Sean remained silent. I tried to keep my voice as cheerful as possible without sounding forced. How about we have pasta for lunch? We arrived home much earlier than planned. And there was Kim's car, parked when she was supposed to be at her part-time job. Oh. I wonder if Kim's shift was cancelled. As I thought this and got out of the car, passing by Kim's car parked in front of the house, I saw something horrifying. Inside Kim's car were Kim and my husband, who was supposed to be at work. Sean, could you go inside first? I encouraged Sean, in his wheelchair, to enter the house on his own. After making sure my son had entered the house, I caught my husband's eye through the window. He was crouched down, fiddling with something outside of view. Curious, I peeked into my daughter-in-law's car and saw my husband trying to fasten his belt in the cramped space of the car. The car seat was reclined, and my husband was on top of Kim, in close contact. Clearly, this was not a situation befitting a father-in-law and daughter-in-law. Knock knock. I tapped on the car window and told them to come inside. So, what exactly were the two of you doing in that cramped car? I confronted my husband and daughter-in-law in a space separated by a door from the room where my son was resting. It was clear to anyone that there was no excusing their situation. Yet, neither of them seemed flustered. Waiting silently for one of them to speak, my husband snorted. As you saw. There's only one thing a man and a woman do in a cramped car, right? My husband responded defiantly. I had never seen such an ugly expression on his face before. His attitude and words made my blood boil instantly. A man and a woman. You are in the positions of father-in-law and daughter-in-law. And there's a significant age gap, right? Age is just a number. It's all about appearance. Right now, I look younger, don't I? Healthier than sick Sean, with his pale face. You've been thinking like that. I was just helping Kim out, instead of our son who can't move freely. Ah, Kim is so diligent. She was secretly crying knowing our son's life is short. I just spoke to her, that's all. You just took advantage of the situation. And Kim, are you okay with this? I questioned my daughter-in-law, who was standing next to my husband with a displeased expression. I want to live a fun life too. I hate having to juggle part-time work, hospital visits, and housework every day. Why do I have to suffer this much when other people are still enjoying their lives? Right, Kim is still young. It's pitiful for her to spend her days caring for a sick person and working. You stay out of this. I shouted loudly to stop my husband. Unlike Sean, Robert has money and is healthy, so he can fulfill various desires. I've decided to switch to Robert. I couldn't stand looking at the two of them, calling each other Robert and Kim. So, you two have been involved since Sean fell ill? That's right. My husband said calmly. Is everything you've just said true? The living room door opened, and there was my son, managing his wheelchair with trembling arms, looking at them angrily. You mean all of this is true? While I was suffering from my illness, you two were getting along just fine? My son confronted them loudly. But considering his weakened state, even raising his voice must have been tough. I went to my son's side and placed my hand on his back. Sean has no right to yell at me. The seemingly gentle daughter-in-law raised her voice before continuing. I thought I was marrying into a happy life. Despite retiring upon marriage, I ended up having to work again, and my days were reduced to a cycle of hospital visits, part-time work, and house chores. I couldn't even enjoy shopping or traveling. I've been suppressing my desires, taking care of you all this time. That's right, Sean. You should be thanking Kim first. I noticed my son clench his fists tightly and couldn't help but yell at my daughter-in-law in frustration. What kind of attitude is that? We have a helper during the day, and your father and I mainly take care of you at night. And you say you had to work, but we've been providing most of the living expenses. The treatment costs were covered by Sean's insurance. She spoke as if she had sacrificed everything, but the reality was different. She hardly took care of my son. She was working during the day, and I was the one primarily taking care of him at night. We had agreed to equally share household chores after she started working, but I ended up doing most of it because she said her new job was tough. I provided for the living expenses and took care of everything, wondering if I was just being used as a caretaker. Despite everything, I had cooperated because I understood what it was like for her, having a husband who fell seriously ill at a young age. But to be treated like this was unforgivable. However, my husband seemed completely oblivious to my feelings. Seems like Kim had a lot of grievances. About various things. He said with a vile smile on his face. With your condition, you couldn't satisfy your wife, could you? A husband who doesn't have money, in fact, costs money because of his illness. It's only natural for her to leave a husband who only causes her trouble. That's right. Don't make me out to be the bad guy. The bad one is you, for getting sick. I couldn't contain my anger towards a wife who didn't provide care, didn't contribute to the household, and a husband who could stoop so low as to insult his son struggling with illness. Enough from both of you. Why does my son, who was even thinking of buying his wife a gift after the hospital visit, have to endure this? I was seething with rage. We're getting a divorce. I said that to my husband. I want a divorce from you. That works out for me. I'm happier being with someone younger and cuter than an older woman anyway. I'll give you a divorce. He wrapped his arm around my daughter-in-law, smirking. Kim, I want you to divorce me too. My son said to his wife with a trembling voice, expecting her to agree. No. She answered immediately. If I divorce you now, I won't get any inheritance, right? After all the hardships I've endured, I think I deserve your inheritance. What are you talking about? Please, just divorce my son and do whatever you want with that man. It's as if she's wishing for my son to leave this world sooner by talking about inheritance while he's still alive. No, but I'll be leaving this house. When you die, I'll come for the inheritance. Saying this, my husband and daughter-in-law quickly packed their things and left. Standing dumbfounded next to me, my son showed his resolve. Mom, I need your help with something. His voice was firm. I'll make sure those two regret what they've done. I'll never forgive them. I could see a quiet rage burning within him. Unlike me, his calmness was admirable. With what? Do you have a plan? Yes. I'll support you in whatever way I can. Then, will you listen to my plan? Of course. My son and I devised a plan. Eventually, only my husband returned home, holding a divorce paper, and we quickly finalized our divorce. As for my daughter-in-law, no matter how many times my son and I tried to contact her, there was no response. 5 years later, my son passed away. I still can't get over the wish that he could have lived longer than me. Many people, including medical professionals and colleagues from the company he worked for before his illness, gathered at my son's funeral. Among the many attendees, I spotted two faces I had never forgotten in the last 5 years. My ex-husband and my son's wife. Oh, you came. Approaching them, I noticed both my ex-husband and daughter-in-law looked considerably shabby. My husband, who once boasted that appearance was everything, looked older than his actual age with sunken cheeks, and my daughter-in-law had lost her initial cuteness, her face now harsh and worn. Both were dressed in tattered clothes. As soon as they saw me, their eyes lit up like a cat that found its prey. I'm here for the inheritance. She said to me as if it were the most natural thing. I deserve the inheritance for all the care I've given him. It's only right. That's right. There should be an inheritance. You're not planning to keep it all to yourself, are you? A child's property is supposed to be inherited by the parents. Even if we divorced because of infidelity, the parent-child bond can't be broken. I'm also entitled to Sean's inheritance. Hurry up and give us the money. This man has had no savings, and these past 5 years have been very tough. But I endured it, thinking it was just until I received Sean's inheritance. You'll forgive me for the affair 5 years ago, right? The change in my daughter-in-law elicited a bitter laugh. She used to sweetly call him Robert, and now it's just this man. The only reason my ex-husband had money to spend freely was that I gave him an allowance. I earned more than my husband from the beginning of our marriage, so I had been giving him a monthly allowance. Restricting his spending too much could have led to him hiding his salary or not contributing to household expenses, which would have been disastrous. So from the beginning, giving him a bit extra as an allowance was just to avoid wasteful spending or hiding money. By saving like that, I protected our finances, but divorcing me to marry a younger woman wouldn't change his nature. He's still not good at saving money and spends whatever he has. The two of them might have left with great fanfare, but their life must have become much harder. It's like they're real hyenas, finding out about my son's death from who knows where. Come on, give us the inheritance. There must be some savings for a home, right? If you've used it up, I won't forgive you. I'll take that along with the inheritance. They came at me demanding, but I stood firm and said sharply, "There's no inheritance for you to receive." "What do you mean?" "This is what I mean." I showed them a document. As soon as they saw it, their faces turned pale. "Give it here." She snatched the document from me, her shoulders trembling. "A donation certificate." She slowly read the words on the document aloud. "That's right. Recently, my son, realizing his time was near, donated his entire fortune to a medical research institution. This is the certificate of that donation. So, there's not a single penny left of the inheritance you came for. That can't be. What was I enduring these 5 years for?" It seemed my daughter-in-law had grown tired of my ex-husband long ago and was only with him for the sake of my son's inheritance. "Then give me money. I was the one taking care of your son, taking him to the hospital, working part-time. I sacrificed myself for him, so I deserve some money." She was so desperate for money that she demanded it from me. "Since you both vanished without a trace, there's something I couldn't inform you about. So, let me tell you now, right here." "What is it?" I prepared to reveal another truth to my son's wife, who was glaring at me. "You are no longer Sean's wife. The divorce has been finalized long ago. So, you don't have any right to Sean's inheritance to begin with." "What?" "That's a lie, right?" Actually, on the day their affair came to light, my son had been recording their conversation from behind the door where I was interrogating the two of them. After they left the house, my son and I took that recording to a lawyer. When we expressed a desire to divorce his wife who had become unreachable due to infidelity, we were advised about going to court. We proceeded with a public notification, and the trial began in her absence. My son's divorce was quickly granted. So, you see, you're no longer pretending to be Sean's wife because you're now a complete stranger. A stranger. Such a foolish girl, really. Living with some other man for 5 years. If my ex-husband truly loved my daughter-in-law, he might have encouraged her to divorce and remarry him at some point. But in the end, he just wanted a young woman who would give herself to him and take care of him. Both of them were just waiting for Sean to pass away, doing nothing to change their own situation. That's why my daughter-in-law didn't realize she was now single, and my ex-husband didn't want to let go of a young wife who looked after him. I sighed deeply before turning back to face them. Furthermore, I've filed for damages against both of you for your adultery. Rest assured, you'll be paying the compensation. Compensation? You can't be serious. We're already in debt as it is. We thought the inheritance would clear that debt, but there's no way we can pay compensation now. Exactly. Why are you demanding compensation now of all times? I had always intended to claim compensation. You two just went missing before I could do it. Now that you've returned, of course, I'm going to demand it. By the way, I've recorded everything you've said since you arrived. Trying to deny the affair now won't work. At this, they seemed furious, both attempting to lunge at me. Hey! What are you doing? However, medical staff and company employees present restrained them, so I was unharmed. Are you okay? Yes, thank you. While being restrained, my ex-husband and my son's ex-wife kept shouting, "Give us the money." Soon after, the sound of a police car approached, and officers arrived. The two of you are suspected of fraud. We'll need you to come with us to the station. It seems someone at my son's funeral must have called the police. The two were taken away by the police. Later, I heard from the police that my ex-husband and my son's ex-wife had turned to fraud to repay their debts. Further investigation revealed more crimes, and they would be spending some time behind bars. It was surprising they had stooped to fraud. The two who had hurled insults at my son were now facing social consequences. My son's ex-wife had wasted her 20s, a prime time of her life, on such follies. While I sympathized with her for my husband becoming seriously ill at a young age, everything else was their own doing. I had no more thoughts for the two who had even engaged in criminal activities. I don't know the extent of their debts, but they might be chased by repayments till their deaths. I might never receive the compensation I demanded, but I'm past caring. If they're suffering that much, I wish them to endure it far away from me. Years have passed since my son's death, but I still receive thank you letters from patients every day, grateful for his donation. Reading these letters, I'm proud of my son's decision. My son's decision to wait for his death to benefit others ensured that not a single penny went to those two, and his contributions are still helping many. When he told me about his plan, my son said, "I'm sorry I can't leave anything for you, Mom." But even years after his funeral, I continue to receive letters of gratitude towards my son. His choice continues to be a source of life for others. What a proud thing it is. I was fortunate to have such a wonderful son. I chose to keep working even after retirement. My job is fulfilling and enjoyable. I'm truly grateful I acquired professional qualifications and knowledge when I was younger. Back then, I was desperate to raise my son, working hard to increase my salary through studying for qualifications. I have enough assets to live on my own, and I owe it all to my son. And I've continued my hobby of mountain climbing. Sean, thank you. I'll make sure to enjoy the rest of my life to the fullest, so wait for me there. I spoke to my son, smiling at his photo on the altar.